It's day 2 of interviews with the pilots of Asiana Airlines Flight 214. The National Transportation Safety Board plans to interview the pilot who was at the controls during the crash landing later today. One of the survivors of that flight is San Francisco resident Ben Levy. He told Bloomberg what happened once the plane hit the runway.
Everybody was, of course, screaming, in total disbelief that it was actually happening to us. And then, all of a sudden everything stops. You realize that somehow you're alive, you're sitting in a cockpit in a plane. We had no knowledge of, the extent of the damage on the outside. Luckily for us, there was, no smoke inside, no fire inside. And so I think it took a little while for everybody to start snapping out of it and realizing, okay, we're live, we got to get out of here.
That was San Francisco resident Ben Levy, a passenger on Asiana Flight 214. The NTSB is looking at everything that could have been a factor in the crash, and that includes technology. Joining us now is Jim Hall, the former chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board under the Clinton administration. He says that the over-reliance on technology is partly to blame for the crash because pilots are too dependent on automated cockpit controls. Jim joins us now from Washington, D.C. And Jim, first of all, we'll get to the technology question in a moment, but we do have new information now about who was at the controls and that pilot, it was his first attempt landing a Boeing 777 at SFO. What do you make of this new information?
Well, the board, during my tenure, made recommendations on crew pairing. The pilots, of course, are going to be interviewed, but the board at some point will need to interview management to find out how they put someone in that seat under these circumstances with the ILS out, and it's their first time landing at SFO.
So you're saying this should not have happened, essentially?
Well, definitely should not have happened. And it's, it's a tragedy, but it's also remarkable that so many people were able to walk away. But the issues they're going to be looking at, I believe here, in addition to the operational era, are going to be looking at the crash worthiness and looking at how the decisions are made on crew pairing in Asiana Airlines.
So what sort of changes then does the FAA and Korean aviation officials, what sort of changes do they need to make sure something like this doesn't happen? I mean, this pilot had apparently landed a 777 several times at other airports, but never SFO. Well,
one of the reasons the National Transportation Safety Board, working with the FAA and the industry, has been so successful in providing such a excellent aviation safety record is that these are very thorough investigations. So it's certainly premature to say what type of recommendations the board's going to make. We certainly can look at certain areas and understand that these are things that are going to be pursued and may be the subject of recommendations from the board when the report is completed.
Now, officials have said, of course, every detail is being investigated, including the use of technology. You have said that pilots have become, and airlines have become, over-reliant on technology. Why do you think that is?
Well, we have a whole generation of pilots that were trained in the military that are retiring. They fly not just for U.S. airlines, but they fly worldwide. And, of course, there are military pilots in other countries. The generation change, the new folks, the young people, they're trained to fly that aircraft on the computer and not hand fly it. And there has to be more attention given to being sure that when if there are computer problems or the avionics aren't there, that they can fly the aircraft. And I think that's something the board will look at very closely in this.
In this case, we're told autopilot was disengaged, though, and visual flight rules were in effect. However, we do know that the glide slope indicator on the runway was out of service. Do you think that if that had been on, it could have changed the outcome here?
That's a possibility. I mean, the NTSB is going to have to look very closely at the avionics at the airport, The decision that was made to take the ILS out, the decisions that were made in regard to all of the other avionics on the airport. And they're also going to have to look at the emergency response. If it's correct that one of the victims may have been killed, or it's been reported, as a result of a vehicle accident rather than the aviation accident.
Now, in terms of, one last question, in terms of whether there is too much technology on flights these days, I've been told by people who are pro-tech on airplanes that tech can help planes be almost too precise. You know, why would you want to be too precise? I mean, wouldn't that be beneficial if the instruments are just additional support?
Well, I think you can tell from my age that I'm probably not the best person to talk about technology. But let's say that, you know, technology is a two-edged sword. It can provide great safety on modern aircraft. But at the same time, we have to be prepared if that technology is not available, as it was in this case.